So thanks for inviting me, everyone. It's a delight to be able to talk about the Lilac project. These are houses made from straw, so I'd be really keen to engage with material scientists in the audience about our venture to live in a straw house. My day jobs I'm Professor of Urban Futures in Geography at Leeds University. I've been moonlighting for the last 6 years building this, and I currently live here. That's my house. This is in humble West Leeds in Bramley. And I'm going to tell you in the next 14 minutes the brief story of what Lilac's all about, why we did it, and what it's like to live there. It's award-winning, first of its kind, totally built from natural materials, co-housing cooperative in the world, we're claiming, and we have thousands of visitors every year. People, mainly kind of community groups who want to come to visit us to try and replicate what we've done. How do we build our own community like this? This was an entirely resident-led development. The government's kind of calling it custom build, self-build. We're calling it community-led housing. Anyway, it's part of an emerging movement across the UK and the world for communities to deliver their own homes. And that's the Lilac model. Lilac stands for something. It stands for low impact living, affordable community. There's 3 bits there, and I'm going to talk about those 3 bits. But each of those 3 bits links to a challenge. So the first challenge is really kind of the big, the financial challenge, right? Which we were in this period that we were developing Lilac from about 2008 onwards. Lots of things happened in the world. The big one was the kind of financial crash. But what this links into is this deep dysfunctionality in our housing market and the affordability crisis we have in the UK. We were responding as residents wanting to build our own homes of this fairly deeply dysfunctional land and housing market we have in the UK as community residents trying to build our own houses in terms of things like land banking and the allocations that go to 95% of all our allocations go to the top 5 or 6 firms. So the fairly deep dysfunctionality that you have to deal with at the grassroots trying to do things from the bottom up. The second big challenge was obviously around the climate change challenge, right? 2009, the last big chance to solve climate change. Oh, here we are again, 2015, the next but one last big chance to solve climate change. But we as residents wanted to say, what can we do in terms of housing? How can we kind of put those principles to tackle climate change into building a neighbourhood? And that's where the kind of straw and timber story comes in. And this is the big challenge. So here we are, business as usual, right? About 2020. This decarbonisation journey, somehow we've got to get to a society which is about 90 or 95% decarbonised in the next kind of 30, 40, 50 years. About a generation or so. But the point is, if housing is one of these wedges, right? What are the ingredients to radically decarbonise everything about our society, from materials to housing to the economy to transport, you name it. That's the journey we're trying to get on, away from this business as usual curve, which will take us up here, right? And the community challenge. So the point is some kinds of community dysfunctionality. This is the English riots. How do we rebuild? How do we build houses? How do we build communities? Right, that was a challenge for us. So what's the response? For us, it was simple, ancient, but actually quite pioneering. On their own, all the things we've done are quite straightforward, but putting them together seemed to be quite difficult and different. We wanted to build a strong community, which was very low impact and was affordable. Those 3 things together, driven by these kinds of values. And there's all sorts of kind of buzzwords that people have talked about to describe Lilac, everything from consensus to kind of future to values to decarbonising, horizontal, all sorts of kind of buzzwords which kind of encapsulate what we're trying to do as a project. So the story, how a group of people built an affordable, low-impact co-housing community. We started off 2008, we set up a cooperative, we were very member-led in those days and we still are, and not-for-profit, so we're formally a bona fide member cooperative, right, under English law. Very values-led organisation. We started to get together to talk about how we could live differently in the future, right? How could we buy a bit of land and build our own homes? We found an old school site in West Leeds in Bramley, right? It had been knocked down recently by Leeds City Council. We bought it from them. There's a huge bits of this story which people are interested, we can chat over a coffee, in the break and things. But we took this site, we made it into this. Essentially, this was like 2013 when we moved in. This was a site around 2012 when we first started with our contractor. It was a year journey. on site, there was kind of 4 years before that persuading lenders, persuading the council, persuading anybody who had to work with us, to our architect, our quantity surveyor, all the kind of professional team that we assembled around us as custom builders to make this project happen. We broke ground with a construction firm called Lindham, who were based in Lincoln, moving into Yorkshire. Actually, the great firm worked with us. We had the HA, our part funders, on board, and we got Kevin McLeod to open and plant a tree with us, and then Housing Minister Mike Prisk. But this was 2013 when we all moved in. So it was it was only 12 months on site, but that was a tiny bit of the story before and afterwards. We still feel like we're in the development phase, figuring out all the issues and problems about making this community work efficiently. So let's have a look quickly at these 3 aspects then. The first one, this low impact living. It's a challenge for us and of interest hopefully for you lot today, of changing buildings and behaviour, right? So how do we do those 2 things coterminously, right? The first one is the easier thing. We teamed up with this wonderful inventor Craig White, who has made this product called ModCell, modular cellulose, which is a prefabricated high precision cut timber and straw and lime product, taking glue laminated timber, which actually at the moment is from Austria, putting straw in them and spraying it with lime, 30ml of lime render. It's a wonderful product, high insulation and thermal mass properties. It's a domestic carbon bank, right? So a 3-bedroom home banks 34 tonnes of CO2 just by the fact that you're using straw, timber and lime as opposed to brick, block or cement or concrete. So we live in domestic carbon banks, off the mark. These are kind of code 4 homes, the old code for sustainable homes 4 out of the box. And the great thing is, because it's off site, you can get the community down to put the kind of bales in the boxes, and so we spent 6 weeks kind of building the panels off site, and we then brought to site like this, and they go up fairly quickly like Lego bricks. So the whole community went up relatively quickly, and ModCell have now set up a centralised production factory in the middle of England where it's servicing different sites. So this was really an R&D project funded by Beckett and HCA under the Low Carbon Building Programme to really kind of bring this product to market. So we did get a grant to do that. And this is the product at the end when we moved in. This is kind of what you get. You can see these are the prefabricated panels with the cedar cladding on the outside with the flat roof finish. I could talk about that kind of stuff more in detail later. So you get a very high insulated product. This is my house, glowing nice and blue and green, and these are the outside homes. Beyond Lilac, the old brick terraces, yeah? So you can see the difference there. This was a Magda and Fionn Stevenson from Sheffield University who did a post-occupancy evaluation with us. So changing the behaviour was really key. A whole bunch of community agreements as a cooperative, yeah, which we use to change the way the neighbourhood social practices are undertaken to further reduce the carbon footprint of the neighbourhood beyond what we've achieved in the buildings. There's no point in having A-rated buildings if you've got F-rated people. So we really wanted to make a push on that one. Yeah, I mean, you know, you can imagine the kind of people who in the first wave have moved into Lilac, you know, people who were very into those kinds of social issues around tackling climate change anyway. So we were pushing an open door. But what we wanted to do was create a framework which could inspire and engage other people. Everyone needs an example, right, about how this kind of stuff works. A common house is at the centre of this kind of thing and is key to reducing that neighbourhood carbon footprint further through shared facilities. So the common house has all sorts of things in it, like shared dining facilities and shared meeting room where we eat together twice a week and we have general meetings. We have everything, after school kids clubs and videos and parties and you name it. So it's the hub, the social focus. And roughly there should be one of these roughly for every, this is about 150 square metres, there should be one of these for every 30 to 50 homes in the UK, so there's a big job to be done. I'd like to see this retrofitted, take every street in the UK, close down the roads, make it car free, put the cars on the edge, the middle house becomes a common house. You could transform every street in Britain without doing almost anything. We've got 2 pocket car parks, that's 10 spaces for 20 homes, so that's 0.5. The Leeds planners did a bit of head scratching at first, but then accepted it, and we're down to 9 cars actually, so we only need 9 rather than 10. That wasn't my watch beeping, by the way, that was our computer. Got 5 minutes left. And we've got on-site composting allotments, so there's agricultural production right in the heart of the city here, so it feels very different. The affordable bit, how do we do this in a way that remains affordable? This is the terrible situation we're in and still in terms of the disjuncture between house prices and average wages, right? So this is the curve's still going up. But what we're building is not social housing, but immediate housing, intermediate housing, not houses for owner-occupied people, for the owner-occupied market, not those social housing that should be delivered by the state, but isn't, by the way, on the scale it should be, but intermediate housing, those that can't get on the housing ladder. So there's this blob in the middle, and it's not provided in Britain, so therefore it's left to the private sector, which is a problem because it's not provided very well on ecological or social standards. So we're a cooperative, which means that we have a particular financial model built into it. But what we've got here is a problem because there's very few housing co-ops in the UK, 0.5% of the entire housing stock compared to other countries. So even if we lobbied for a huge growth in cooperative housing, it still wouldn't make much, many inroads compared to our EU European friends. So we use this model called a mutual home ownership model. There's a huge amount of detail to it. All I'm going to do is just present the idea to you now because there's far too much to say beyond the model. But the general idea is that every member of the cooperative pays 35% of their net income every month to the society. That pays one big corporate mortgage with an ethical lender, Triodos Bank, and in return for that 35% payment, you buy your equity that we've given you in the society, and it's yours to take when you leave. The big deal is that the value of that equity when you leave is linked to national earnings and not house prices. So we've essentially created a product which is decommodified and is affordable in perpetuity. I'm not going to say any more than that because it's fairly complex, but it's quite a big deal because to move into Lilac, you're jumping out of the commodified housing market. We've got a waiting list of 40 people. So actually, this is a product which is, people want to get in because of the social return rather than financial return. So the community bit, a mutual living revolution. These are some of the aspects of society I think we're trying to challenge against. The various social problems in our society. Let's just leave it at that. I think what we tried to do in Lilac was embark upon a community-led design process right at the beginning to build our community. And here's some of the stuff we did in the early years to design our community with our architects right from the word go, the internals, the site, the energy systems. And we came up with this, right? This is the master plan we submitted for planning, the kind of blocks based around this horseshoe with the common house in the middle. And it's a wonderful landscape site. We have lots of tours, and if people want to kind of have a tour, that kind of thing, we can arrange it. So we end up with this beautifully landscaped site around this Suds pond with a common house here. A very natural, beautiful site. And these are the internals. You got these floor-to-ceiling windows, maximising south-facing solar heating. Energy bills are really cheap. I live in a 4-bed house. My gas and electricity combined annually is £400 for a 4-bed. That's pretty good. About 70%, 8% reduction on the average. And I've got 2 kids in the house, so there's a lot going on, a lot of heating, a lot of baths, that kind of thing. But the rhythms of the community, it's the life in life that brings it to life. The various patterns of community life and interactions. 38 adults, 12 kids, growing every year. And what we've tried to do is lock in community functions, everyday community function in the common house. You have to come and collect your post. There's no letterboxes in the houses in the common house. We've got 5 washing machines in the common house. So we've scaled the point behind co-housing design. You scale back the private houses and you increase the shared stuff, which reduces individual costs and increases social collective costs. So that was a Lilac model. But the thing I want to leave with you is, okay, we've created a nice place to live. So what? Beyond I've got a nice house kind of story. But how can we nurture a community-led housing movement then? How can we tap into this huge latent potential? We've set up a national alliance for community-led housing with the Building and Social Housing Federation and Colville, backed by the Nationwide Foundation, because we've realised there's this huge potential of groups not being able to move quickly enough through this development journey. Because we did it fairly successfully, but it did take 6 years. How can we shorten that development journey with groups? These development costs are really, So here's the development cost at Lilac, £1,000 a square metre. Average cost in Leeds, 170 for a 3-bed. We did 140. So even what we did in the R&D stage was really affordable, yeah, and it can easily should be replicated. We've got some software backing it up because it is quite complex, right? The financial model, but we have some housing software we developed with a software engineer called Dwell to make the whole thing work. So some points to leave with. Organisations tend to be successful when they put the challenges and values up front. That's what we've learned. There's huge potential of natural materials, especially straw, right, in the north of England, where there's an abundance of it, which just gets thrown into barnyards for, I'm out of time, but I've got 30 seconds to go, so I'll be all right. Shortening that development journey, experimental sites and land reform, right, which councils could deliver. Different kinds of financing, especially start-up and high street lending. There are some returns which large-scale investors could get out of this market, yeah? Ethical lenders. We need some capacity building from the cooperative sector, and we need this community-led housing movement which we're developing, as I said. And what we're doing in Leeds is this Leeds Community Homes to take this forward locally. So we've teamed up with Gipsel, Latch, Canopy, others, Leader Architects, to build this community-led organisation in Leeds that can develop 1,000 homes towards Leeds' 66,000 housing target, and we feel we can pull down £100 million investment. We're going to launch a community shares offer in the winter, so we can talk more about this in the break or whatever. And that's my book about lilac. So I distilled a lot of this into a book, and there it is. If you want to kind of read more about lilac anyway, and you can even get a discount. So then that's the website if you want to check out more about the lilac project. It's quite a lot on our website. So thanks. I'll stop there, and that's it. Brilliant.